Well, it was just a week ago that we talked about two big head coaches going to the Big Ten in Luke Fickell and Matt Rule. Perhaps the biggest offseason coaching addition, Deion Sanders deciding he wanted to leave Jackson State and sign on to be the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. Now, Colorado having a miserable year, having a miserable last couple years, but with Deion going there, it adds a new dynamic to the Pac-12 moving forward. And I guess I got to ask, Deion Sanders to Colorado makes Colorado a top blank team.
In the Pac-12, a top 8 team. I don't know. There's so many variables going on there. Like, I think automatically they
should top 25 2023 season.
Unranked, and they will not be ranked at any point during the season.
2024.
See, I don't know because I don't know the players who are going to come in. This is
well,
the
I'll tell you
thing.
Some of the players. There's a lot of them are 5-star and 4-star players.
This is the interesting thing. So I've seen the transfer portal in flux this week. Obviously, his son is going to come to Colorado, even though his son didn't seem too enthused about it at that press conference. His son, it looks like, is going to leave Jackson State to be the quarterback at Colorado. There's just so much in flux with that program that it's just difficult to evaluate. But on its surface level, I think it's an interesting move. If you're Colorado, you're kind of in a no-lose situation by bringing in Deion Sanders. And it's unique for a bunch of different situations. First and foremost, it's the first coach from an HBCU to ever get hired for a Power 5 coaching job. Now, I recognize that it's because of Deion Sanders that this is the case. And college football has a terrible track record when it comes to diversity hiring. So I understand that this is reasonable to suspect this is the first, even if it's a problem. And the Deion Sanders situation, I was talking off air, like, I find it so difficult to evaluate, not just because I don't know the players that are going to be on the Colorado team, but because I don't know what Deion Sanders can sell other than Deion Sanders to turn that program around.
Okay, but I guess my question for you is, because so often when we talk about like Georgia, you defer to the fact that they have 5 stars coming out the wazoo. Now we're talking about if that same principle is applied to Colorado and they have 5 stars on 5 stars surrounding the building. Does that not shift how you look at them in the Pac-12? Does that not shift how you look at them in the top 25 rankings idea?
So I think what we're talking about is more like the 4-star guys coming to Colorado, because there's only like 30 to 45 stars every time around. And Deion Sanders got 2 of them. He got 2 of them to go to Jackson State. Travis Hunter, the number 2 prospect in his class, was at Jackson State last season. And his son, who is really more of a 4.5 to 4-star guy, but you could argue that that's a player out of Jackson State's league in terms of recruiting, because he's Deion Sanders' son and because of what Jackson State was building in terms of like the environment and Deion selling Deion and HBCU. Like, you can point to that and say that's something they were building towards. I don't know how that's going to replicate at Colorado, and there's so many variables, and I'm not a recruiting expert by any stretch of the imagination. So I think everything is in flux, that it's like, well, look, if you get a handful of 4 stars and you get a handful of 5 stars into Colorado, you can win 8 games in the Pac-12. I mean, that's basically what Washington did. The difference with Washington is Washington has a lot of resources and donors that can ultimately build an NIL program such that they go 5-7 the year prior, bring in a new coach, have Michael Penix transfer from Indiana to Washington, have some linebackers and defensive linemen transfer from Fresno State with DeBauer, and they go 10-2. So like, it's easier to do that than building something from scratch at Colorado. And I feel very confident in saying next year they are, best case scenario, going to win 6 games. That I feel pretty confident in saying, no matter how many players get in the door, when you're like turning a 1-11 program over in flux, best case scenario, they win 6 games next year. But again, there's just so many variables, and I don't know what that's going to look like.
So if we were building the perfect college football coach, right, we would have to start with the personality, right? You have to have a good personality for recruiting. That would probably be like a good starting point, right? And you talk about these recruiting visits. If I told you Deion Sanders was walking in your building versus Matt Rule, Deion being a household name, Deion being Deion Primetime Sanders, a Hall of Famer, has the jewelry, has won 2 Super Bowls, hell, has played in a World Series. You know who Deion Sanders is. Your mom, your dad, they know who Deion Sanders is. All your uncles and aunts, they know who Deion Sanders is. It kind of shifts the priorities of a young man, just putting yourself in the mindset of a 18-year-old kid, 2 coaches walk through your door, one of them being an NFL all-time Hall of Famer, largely regarded as the best player at his position, if not one of the best players of all time in the NFL, right? So this guy has pelts on the wall. What he brings to you. What struck me about this hiring is just, why Colorado, right? Like what a lot of us were like projecting what Deion Sanders could do, what his next stop would be, and how far he wanted to really take the coaching thing. Because when he went to Jackson State, a lot of people just kind of looked at it as, okay, he's lifting up HBCUs, right? It's a way to kind of like give back to the community and everything. But now it's like, okay, he's actually invested and enthralled by the idea of being a coach, because he's obviously signing deals to do it. And yes, if Colorado's going to throw a bunch of money at you to do it, sure, that's part of the factoring in. But he could be doing anything with his time, right? Deion Sanders doesn't have to be a head coach. That's what's so unique about it. He's choosing to do this. And, we look around the landscape of college football, it's just like Colorado is like such a mid to below average.
No, it's a dead program. It's a dead program for the last 15 years. It's dead.
They're bad this year. They're bad last year. They've been bad for years upon years of years beyond that. You have to go back let's see. I'm just looking through their records here. I'm struggling to find like a double-digit win year. The fact
it doesn't exist. For 15 years, Colorado has been terrible. And the reason Deion took that job is it was the only one offered to him. He was having conversations with USF. The job wasn't ever offered to him, perhaps because he had already been offered the Colorado job before that. They do have one 10-win season, by the way. 2016, they had a weird 10-win season. But other than that, they have had no 10-win season since 2001. So one 10-win season in the last 20 years, a lot of missed bowl games in there. But again, like when you're talking about Deion walking into the recruiting and selling parents on Deion and the environment being different, that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying Deion Sanders is selling Deion Sanders. Yeah. And by the way, that worked great at Jackson State. He went 22-5 in 3 seasons at Jackson State. It worked unequivocally. That's why he's now getting the job at Colorado. And
I lost track of something. I just want to backtrack a little bit. So building that pie of like what makes a good college football head coach. So I mentioned the personality. How much of that section of that pie do you think that is? Because there is a portion that is schematically, right? I don't know how good of a schematic head coach Deion Sanders is. And that may be the ultimate thing that kind of limits his ceiling. Not saying that Deion Sanders doesn't know football, but it's a different skill set to be a head coach calling plays or choosing the correct people to call those plays for you than it is to be a complete CEO head coach. You can line up all the 5 stars in the world, but look at Texas, right? We talk a lot of Texas football on this one. We know that there's a lot of 5 stars, 4 stars on that team, and they still struggle to get out the gate, to go to that 8-win season, as we've kind of mentioned here. Colorado, historically, it would be a larger rebuild in that sense. So I hear what you're saying. I just think that personality is so much more important than it is if we were just talking about this from an NFL coaching perspective.
Yes, 100%. And personality is making up a big part of the pie. I'm taking this secondhand from Bomani Jones. I didn't watch it. He was saying that from the press conference with Deion, they did not ask a single schematics question to Deion Sanders during the introductory press conference, which again, secondhand sourcing, I think that's interesting. And by the way, I don't know that Deion can't sell Deion Sanders at Colorado. He did it at Jackson State. He's going to try the same strategy at Colorado, because the one thing Colorado doesn't have is money. One of the fun stories out of that press conference, the AD said, we don't have the money right now to pay him, but it's coming in at some point in the near future. So like Colorado doesn't have money. And the thing that I think is interesting is if he's going to sell Deion Sanders at Colorado, it's going to be a long buildup, because I know Colorado is in the Pac-12. I know the Pac-12 has a name. This is like the USF job that he was also in contention for is probably a better job than Colorado. By the way, USF team that won 4 games the last 3 seasons, that job still might be better than the Colorado job.
So at least a warmer job.
At the very least, it is a warmer job. And I again, if he's going to sell Deion Sanders, it's going to be 3 years before we see some sort of results, because no one can build up a program like that in a span of just a couple years. Lance Leopold at Kansas is something that was being held up as this incredible story, and he won multiple Division III championships, went to Buffalo and turned them from a nowhere program into a team that won a MAC championship. This is year 2 of rebuilding that thing, and they went 7-5 this year, and people were calling it one of the great turnarounds through the transfer portal in the like modern recollection, and that was 7-5. So no matter how many players you bring in, I'm gonna say reasonably Colorado goes 4-8 next season, and then by year 2 we can kind of start to see what that's going to look like. But I have no idea what it's going to be, because what Deion Sanders is selling is Deion Sanders, because there's not really a whole lot else to convince 4-star players to go to Colorado over insert SEC school here, or insert 9 out of 14 SEC schools here.
Here it's a good party school. I don't know if that's the priority list, but whatever. Boulder, I can't imagine there's much else to do around there, so might as well party it up. But then again, dude, that's kind of the same problem that Texas has too, and some of these recruits. But hey, what are you gonna do?
I don't know. Like, it'll be interesting to see. And again, it'll be a years-long process. It's not going to be like we flip the light switch and all of a sudden they win 9 games because they're bringing in all these players. I feel confident saying that's not going to happen. But again, this will be certainly an experience. It's certainly more sexy than Scott's. Well, actually, that Scott Satterfield story is super interesting. Scott Satterfield hated being at Louisville. Louisville hated him. They just won too many games to fire him. So then he took the Cincinnati job. It's kind of wild. But I was just inserting, like, certainly the Deion Sanders hire is more interesting than Scott Satterfield going to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit disappointed to know that Jerry Rice's son isn't currently at Colorado anymore. Or at least I can tell. I think he's at UNLV now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but either way, that would be
UNLV
cool.
Also just fired their coach, so maybe he'll be at another program soon.
Open up the transfer portal, Deion. It's your time. It's prime time. Anyway, guys, let us know below in the comments section what you think of the Deion Sanders hire by the Colorado Buffalo. Do you think this one's going to work out for them? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias. From Juju and Kyle, stay safe, happy, and healthy. We will see you next time.